one thing I want to talk about, because yes, a lot of people, well, most people are suffering from hypothyroidism, and a lot of the listeners, especially, are focused on their thyroid. And there's supplementing with just T3. How is that not helpful if you're not addressing the issue? And I'm not saying that this medication is not right for certain people, but like you said, it shouldn't be the first step. What should people be tackling first before going to that step?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one thing I want to come back to that you mentioned was, adding TRT on, adding in testosterone if there's an endotoxin issue. And I think that's a good example of why that's not a good first step, because in this case, not only does endotoxin lower testosterone production, but it also increases aromatase. Aromatase is the enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. So one of the last things you want when you're trying to provide extra testosterone is extra estrogen. And if we don't address the root of the issue, that testosterone that we're taking in can be aromatizing and be converting to excessive amounts of estrogen, which causes all sorts of effects that we don't want.
So
So
that is just like taking more T4 if it's only going to be converted into reverse T3 and it can make you worse. So just wanted to use that as the same type of example.
absolutely. Yeah. And the reverse T3 can actually inhibit the T3 binding into the cell and its activity. So you actually have an anti-thyroid effect there. So yeah, that's the exact reason why we don't want to consider these things as first steps. And you mentioned T3 in the case of hypothyroidism. And one of the great things about T3 is you can circumvent a conversion issue. So unlike the T4, where we can take it and it can convert to reverse T3 if we have these issues, if we take the T3, that's not going to happen. However, if we're in a state of hypothyroidism, oftentimes we're in a high stress state, as you were saying, internal stress. And that's a state where we're not effectively producing energy. We don't have enough energy available. And what T3 does is it increases our metabolic rate. It's like pressing on the gas pedal. And if there's not enough fuel in the tank, or we're not able to effectively convert that fuel into energy, and we press on the gas pedal, we can create a lot of damage. We can cause the stress to become even worse. And it's also worth noting that in a hypothyroid state, we have increased sensitivity to the stress hormones. So one thing that can happen really often if we bring in T3 before someone's ready is they notice stress symptoms, anxiety, heart palpitations, insomnia, sometimes extreme hunger. Sometimes it instead is more of a fatigue presentation. But you can increase the exact stress that we're trying to avoid, that we're trying to decrease. And so with that in mind, what we do want to do as far as those first steps go is start with the most foundational things that affect our energetic state, that affect our health. This comes back to things like getting enough of the nutrients we need, not just the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals, but also the macronutrients. We're getting enough protein, we're getting enough carbohydrates, and we're getting enough fat to provide the fuel for our body's needs and the building blocks that our bodies need. Along with that, we want to make sure we're getting the vitamins and minerals in. And we want to make sure that we have good digestion, right? We're not dealing with the constant influx of endotoxin, and we're also effectively breaking our food down so that we can absorb those nutrients that are coming in. And it's effectively passing through in a way that's not going to stimulate the growth of bacteria or candida, parasites, and those kinds of things. And then a couple of other real fundamental ones. One would be blood sugar regulation. And what that means is that we have properly spaced out meals. We're not, again, there's always exceptions, but we're not kind of grazing throughout the day, but we're also not fasting and we're not skipping meals, because each of those have their own negatives to them. If we're skipping meals, we're going to be increasing cortisol and other stress hormones, which is going to decrease things like testosterone and T3. And that has been shown in intermittent fasting studies, where it will actually, again, not doing full day fast, multi-day fast, those we already know for sure, those sorts of fasts will have these effects, but even just the intermittent fasting can lower testosterone and can lower T3. And so we want to make sure we're eating consistent meals, and that they're well balanced, right? If we're eating a meal that's really high in protein and very low in carbs, we can have the same effect of increasing glucagon, adrenaline, and cortisol as a way to help re-regulate the blood sugar. And so we want to make sure we're having at least enough carbohydrates in every meal, and ideally with a balance with some amount of protein and fat. And so those are some of the foundations, but we also have things like sleep, right? Just a lack of sleep alone is going to affect stress, affect insulin sensitivity, affect thyroid hormone production. Sunlight exposure is huge, not only for things like vitamin D, which is often pointed to, but it actually has direct effects in terms of stimulating the production of steroid hormones, like testosterone and progesterone. So getting enough sunlight is massive here, and there's a couple other foundations, but coming back to the question of when is it appropriate for maybe taking the next step with the hormones, we want to make sure we're at a point where we've addressed those foundations and we've seen the improvements along the way, and we know that we're heading in the right direction. But there can be, I mean, for some of us who have spent decades digging in the metabolic hole, right, that we're now stuck in, it can take a long time for our bodies to recognize that we're in a good environment and they're able to shift out and we can increase our metabolic rate. We can restore proper reproduction. Sometimes that's not even weeks or months. Sometimes it can take years to fully recover there. And if we are confident that we're on the right road and we're providing the right support, then we might be ready to press gently on the gas pedal with some of these hormones and encourage our body or kind of artificially provide the signals that are saying that our environment is good, right? We're kind of artificially providing these good environmental signals, these signals of abundance physiologically. And we want to be careful in doing it, but that's the situation. That's the time when I might consider it. And yeah, it's after those foundations have been addressed, we're confident we're on the right path, but we're still stuck in certain ways, and we want to slowly and carefully speed the progress up.
I like the word abundance that you use because I think the mindset and your mindset has so much to do with it. Women especially are always we've grown up in an environment where we're told to restrict. If it's not working, restrict more. Work out more, eat less. Work out more, eat less. And just going back to the bank analogy, now I only have $15 in the bank. I'm not going to spend much money because I don't have much there. But if you have that abundant mindset of energy and, oh, if I eat more, I'll spend more. And the thought of like, if I eat more and it's converting into the energy, I'm going to have more energy to go for a longer hike or play with my kids with more energy or get off the couch for more hours during the day. It will convert. But it's the mindset too of believing that your body is working and that the messengers are being sent to the right place, and that will lower the stress, because just by having a restrictive mindset, you are going to increase your stress just out of the box.